Hello everyone. Welcome to the Audio Storage Channel, a channel specializing in providing the best reading stories today. Wish you a happy day listening to stories. Invite you to listen. I have secretly loved Han Shanjin since I was little. When I was 7 years old, my father brought me to the Han family mansion. The old man Han Gong was lying on his sickbed and asked me if I would be willing to stay in the Han family and be the bride of his nephew, Han Shanyu. That year, Han Shanyu was 15 years old. The winter in Gaoshan was not very cold, and there was a fireplace in the room. My father and I were sweating profusely, our faces flushed, yet the young man in front of us was wearing a cloak embroidered with a crane and bordered with a snowfox fur. He was really handsome, with jet black hair, fair skin, and a pair of eyes as clear as smoke. Those eyes contained a cold light, and when they looked at me, the brown pupils were like a deep stream, calm and without ripples. Humans are inherently incapable of resisting beautiful things. Let alone my father always called me, foolish child. My father's name is Hu Dai, my name is Hu A Bao. Before the age of 7, he and I relied on each other to survive, living on a boat in the Chu Na Sea. There are many fishermen in the Chu Na Sea, and we are the lowest people there, the Dan people. The Dan people use boats as their homes, living on boats for generations, not allowed to know how to read and live on land. Therefore, we drift on the water, catching fish and shrimp, raising aquatic products and diving for pearls. Most of the people in the tribe are very poor, their clothes are always patched, they are exposed to the sun and rain all year round, causing everyone's skin to crack and darken. That's why, the first time I saw Han Sun knock, I was stunned. In addition to fishing, the fishermen in Cao Sun mainly make a living by diving for pearls. My father was a pearl diver. He once told me that pearls have 8 grades, and the Dongzhou pearl is the best, emitting a dazzling light. The outer edge is like gold. Placed in a dark room can replace a candle. It is a rare treasure in the world. I have never seen a Dongzhou pearl before. My father has only heard of it. He learned to swim at the age of 6. He has been a pearl diver all his life. The most precious pearl he has ever found is the luuaudio pearl. In our eyes, the luuaudio pearl is already a top-grade pearl. But when I first saw Han Shanyu, I foolishly thought that even that rare pearl, I'm afraid it won't be as beautiful as his brother. The Han family is very powerful in Gaoshan. Their ancestors were from the Zhang clan, belonging to the Han clan. After submitting to the Tang dynasty, a branch of the family was granted land here. Han Gong, also known as Old Master Han, is the current head of the Han family, highly respected and revered by the people. I don't know how my father met him, but it was definitely not a good thing. A tall man like him, upon seeing Old Master Han, immediately knelt down in front of him with a thud, crying miserably, never raising his head. The elder on the sickbed had white hair and a haggard face. He looked at my father for a long time, stretched out a skinny hand, and pointed at him with a trembling voice, whispering, "Is it you, is it you?" My father couldn't cry out loud, but Old Master Han actually shed tears. Later, that old man asked me if I was willing to stay in the Han family, to be his nephew, Han Shan-yu's fiancé. This matter didn't need a 7-year-old child like me to answer. When my father brought me to the Han family, he had already packed my luggage. He had no intention of taking me back. The day he returned to Chu Na Sea alone, I chased him all the way to the alley, and kept asking, "Father, if you don't take me back, when you dive into the sea to look for pearls, who will be on the boat holding the rope for you? Father, you're drunk and sleeping outside the boat, who will pull the blanket over you? Father, you're alone looking at the stars, without your daughter by your side, are you used to it?" My father suddenly burst into tears upon hearing this. He turned around and sat down, hugging me tightly, just like when I was a child, his big hand holding my head, his goatee gently rubbing against my face. I was tickled by the rubbing and couldn't stop laughing, saying to my father, "Father, I can't sleep if I don't hear you snoring at night. Baoer, my silly Baoer, can you give me some time? Trust me, I can definitely redeem you and bring you back to Zuya Sea. Yes, I'll wait for you here." I used my 2 small hands to hold my father's face, looking at him seriously. "Come early, father." All the fishermen in Zuya Sea knew that the daughter of the Hu family was the most obedient child, obedient to the point of being a little silly. I even deliberately told my father, "Dad, when you go down to the water to look for pearls, don't go alone, you have to find someone on the boat to hold the rope." Father nodded, hugged me tightly again, and couldn't help but choke up. He probably didn't want me to see his tearful appearance, and in the end, he didn't even look back. Father's figure disappeared at the end of the alley. When I turned around, I saw a young man wearing a snowfox fur coat standing under the camphor tree at the back door of the Han Manor. On a gloomy winter day, the young man looked like a fairy descending to earth, raising his head to look at the sky. Looked at me, like a jade bodhisattva with cold eyes, calm expression. Go chase after your father, no one in the Han family will stop you. The young man spoke. I looked at him blankly, shook my head. Father will not take me anywhere. You are a child, cry, make a little noise, what can he do to you? You can't cry. Father said that children must listen to adults. He said that he would come to pick you up, so you just wait. Han Shanyu frowned, the corner of his thin lips curled up. He seemed to laugh, then sighed softly. The sigh was so small that it was almost inaudible. He turned and left. I just stayed at the Han family like that. They assigned me a place to stay, called Dao Lan Inn. Dao Lan Inn always had a faint fragrance. The incense smoke lingered, sweet and fragrant. The screen in the room was made of rosewood. The bed was made of agarwood. The bed was covered with brocade. The curtains were also made of silk brocade. There was a maid beside me, named Ah Shin. Ah Shin was plump, a quick-witted girl. She called me Miss Baoer, and treated me very respectfully. She put away all my patched clothes, bathed me with fragrant beans. Bathe me. After bathing, apply another layer of fragrant ointment. That fragrant ointment is very precious. Atan said that it has pearl powder mixed in it. Applying it for a long time can make my dark face white. Every day at the hour of thin, after breakfast, she will take me to see the old man, through a carved ivory screen with gilded lacquer, kowtow to greet the old man. This is the etiquette of the rich. Han Shan Yu was there once. Through the gap of the screen, I saw the young man wearing a brocade robe, changing into a fox fur cloak embroidered with clouds and assorted patterns, standing silently in the room, like a shining pearl. It seems that he is really afraid of the cold. No matter how hot the fireplace in the house is, he always wears very thick clothes. His face is like jade, white and clean. He has a composure that is not suitable for his age. When talking to the old man, his voice is always calm, not hearing any emotions. Later, I heard Ah Shin say that the Han family's descendants were few and far between. The old master's sons, except for an adopted son, the fourth Han, all died early. Han Shanyu was the old master's only grandson, the future head of the Han family. That's why he shouldered a great responsibility. Under the strict teachings of his grandfather, he developed a mature personality beyond his age. When the old master was seriously ill, he was able to shoulder it independently and assume the responsibility of the head of the family. That day, through the screen, I heard him report to the old master. The son of Lord Chong, the Yongzhou Jiadushi of Gaoshandao, is getting married. I have sent someone to deliver a bucket of pearls as a congratulatory gift. The old master's cough rang out at the right time. He said unhappily, the two prefectures of Gaoshandao each have military power. Chongjiang has always been familiar with us. You should go to their happy family event yourself. Grandpa, don't forget, the Han family and the Thuong family have had an engagement since ancient times. When Thuong Hak Tiu was young, he lived in our mansion. Because he and elder sister are familiar, I think I shouldn't go. Han Shanyu's voice was still calm. After a long while, the old man coughed again. He spoke intermittently. Child, you did the right thing. It was me who was confused. I am really too old and confused. The old man quickly rested. When Han Shanyu left, he saw me kneeling outside the screen. His steps paused for a moment. The 7-year-old child looked at him, his eyes clear. He squatted down in front of me, then suddenly reached out, pulling the small bun of hair that a Shin had combed for me. Then he laughed. After a bath, you are really cute. The day my father and I arrived at the Han family, my hair was messy and I couldn't comb it. My face was dirty no matter how I washed it. I was wearing patched clothes that I thought were clean but were actually very sloppy. Who knew that in their eyes, I was ugly? How ugly. Atan is really skillful. She can comb my hair neatly in just a moment, and also use deer fat to scrape off the dirt on my face. Han Shan Yu has a pair of cold eyes. I never knew that these eyes, when shining with a smile due to a happy mood, could be so amazing. That day I looked at him in a daze. He was interested in pulling my small round bun, and said kindly, "Little charcoal, come here again in the afternoon. He must be awake by then. You can tell him the story of the fisherman in the Chu Na Sea." The old master is really confused. He clearly told me to stay at the Han family to be his nephew's fiancé, but he seemed to have forgotten me as soon as he turned around. His health was very poor. Every time Atan took me to kowtow to greet him, we would do it through a screen, and we would hear a hunchbacked old servant come out and say to us, The old master is resting, go back first. So I came to the Han family for 10 days, and every day I could only kowtow through the screen, and never once did I formally pay my respects to him. Until this afternoon, according to Han Shan Yu's words, I went to pay my respects, and he was indeed awake. The old man was visibly thinner. I obediently kowtowed, calling him grandfather in a childish voice. He opened his cloudy eyes and looked at me for a long time. The old servant beside him reminded me, it's the daughter of the Hu family, that fisherman, the fisherman from the Chu Na Sea, who came here a few days ago to apologize, leaving behind his daughter. He said to let this child be the young master's fiancé. Only then did the old man remember me. I stood in front of him, feeling a little uneasy, because I heard that the old man was a strict person, and because of my father's reasons, I always felt that he would not like me. But surprisingly, he was very gentle, very friendly to a 7-year-old child like me. As Han Shan Yu said, he was very interested in the stories of the fishermen in the Chu Na Sea, and asked me to sit on a chair and tell him. I sat down obediently and told him how fishermen weave fishing nets and dive into the sea for pearls. He asked me, do you get to eat rice? I nodded, yes, we get to eat rice every day, the rice is very fragrant. The old man nodded in satisfaction, then asked me again, when you dive into the sea for pearls, do you wear protective gear? I shook my head, Grandpa, the ripe buffalo hide is too expensive, we can't afford it. Too expensive, can't afford it. The old man repeated these words, his voice sad, his haggard face showing a look of heartache. The old man coughed and said to me, pearl diving is a very dangerous job. There are big fish, dragons, and sea monsters in the sea. If they touch them, the pearl digger will have his belly and legs broken and die. Usually, when people on the boat see a trace of blood on the water's surface, the person is already dead at the bottom. When they pull him up, there will only be an incomplete corpse. As for the protective clothing, it is made of cooked buffalo skin, which can resist the attacks of jellyfish and sea snakes. As a fisherman who makes a living by diving for pearls, of course I also know these things. Hearing the old man's sorrow, I comforted him, don't worry, Grandpa. The people in the clan no longer go to places too deep to dig for pearls. Everyone who goes into the water is very careful. The old man sighed, and after a while, he asked about my father again. I said, your father is a very good swimmer, a very good pearl diver. The only bad thing is that when he is diver, he always goes alone, he doesn't like to find companions. The old man asked, why? I said, I heard that when your mother was alive, she also knew how to dive for pearls. Normally she would go into the water with your father. At that time the two of them even made friends to go with the people in the clan, but later when your mother died from difficult labor, your father didn't like to hang out with people anymore, he always went into the water alone. Speaking up to here, I don't know why the old man's expression suddenly changed, he was a little stunned. I said again, it's okay, when you go into the water, I will be on the boat holding the rope. Hearing this, the old man laughed. Even if he shakes the rope to signal, how can a child like you pull him up? My father made a wooden wheel that can be pedaled by foot. Although I am still young, my strength is not small. Moreover, my voice is very loud and I will shout to call people. I looked at the old man seriously. He nodded and said, good boy. You and your father are both very smart. In the following days, after every lunch, I would visit the old man. If he was awake and in good spirits, the old servant would let me in to talk for a while. I obediently sat on the chair and continued to tell the story of the fishermen fishing for pearls. The old man listened attentively, sometimes smiling with satisfaction, sometimes frowning and sighing. After that, there was nothing more to tell. I talked about the strange legends of the Chu Na Sea. Legend has it that under the reef 500 miles south of the sea, there is a very deep pearl pond. In it, there are many rare treasures and priceless pearls. But no pearl divers dare to go there, because the pearl pond is very deep and very scary. At the bottom of the pond there is a type of sea monster called Hai Hua Thuong living. Hai Hua Thuong has a human head and a turtle body, looks like a monk with red eyes and a turtle shell on his body, has a fierce temperament, unparalleled strength, and likes to eat people. Not to mention the bottom of the pearl pond, just seeing that sea from afar, any pearl divers must stay far away from that dangerous place. Because people believe that encountering Hai Hua Thuong, the end result is the ship sinking and people dying. Besides Hai Hua Thuong, Chu Na Sea also has a legend about Chau. Speaking of Chau, the old man suddenly coughed. The old servant with a hunchback hurriedly stepped forward to serve him, giving him a lot of water to drink. Calming down a bit, the old man asked me in a hoarse voice, did your father mention Chau to you? I was a little worried about his health, because his complexion wasn't very good at the moment, but under his gaze, I still answered honestly, yes. There are 8 grades of pearls: Dang Chau, Tan Chau, Ho Chau, Lui Lap Chau, Quan Vu Chau, Thu Chau, Thong Fu Chau, Bai Chau. Besides these 8 grades, there is also a type called Zich Chau. Zich Chau, or also known as Huyat Chau, it is said to have the effect of bringing the dead back to life. At the bottom of the pearl pond where Hai Hua Thuong resides, there are pearls, but no one can find them. Father said that it was just a legend of the Chu Na Sea. The people of Gao Shan Dao all knew it was fake. There was no Kai Chau in the world. There could not be a Kai Chau. What you said doesn't need to be taken to heart. The legend that everyone in Gao Shan Dao knew, someone like the old master certainly knew. I thought it was just idle talk. Unexpectedly, when he heard that, he coughed again. This time he coughed out a mouthful of blood. The servants in the room were instantly tense. The old servant with a hunchback ordered someone to immediately call the doctor. Everyone was flustered. I was frightened by this scene, stupidly stood up from the chair. The old master on the sickbed, his eyes still looking at me. He opened his mouth to breathe, weakly said, "The vast ocean waves, the pearls sink to the bottom of the sea. The pearl diggers risk their lives to search for pearls, crying out to the heavens, but the heavens don't listen. Father and son, you deserve to be punished." I knew that the old master was reciting a poem that all the people of Gao Shan Dao knew. No 3-year-old children in the Chu Na Sea knew how to sing since they were young. The Mi Suyen capital, the waves were as big as a house. The wind howled during the day, the ghosts cried at night. Tens of thousands of living beings transformed into fish and turtles, naked, diving into the water to find treasures. Everyone knows that now the Sao Sun Dao has calm waves and calm seas, but during the Southern Dynasty, many Mi Suyen were established by the son of Trung Tong. The emperor was tyrannical and unjust, oppressing the innocent people, forcing fishermen and coastal fishermen to become soldiers, forcing them to dive into the water to search for pearls. The Mi Suyen soldiers monitored the pearl divers going into the sea, tied rocks to their feet, and threw them into the bottom of the sea 100 feet deep to retrieve pearls. Not only because of the big fish in the sea, diving too deep also caused the pearl divers to suffer a lot. Countless people died every day, most of them suffocated and drowned. But in order to satisfy the emperor's bottomless greed, along with the search for the legendary red pearl, the surveillance soldiers treated the pearl divers very brutally. Anyone who did not get the pearl and dared to shake the rope to be pulled onto the boat would be beheaded on the spot. Countless pearl divers drowned in Mi Suyen, countless were beheaded. In the cold winter, pearl divers froze to death due to low temperatures, often in the thousands. Pearl divers who could not stand the tyranny and resisted would be beheaded, implicating the entire village. Accumulated blood dyed the sea red, thousands of villages and hamlets almost perished. This was the nightmare of the Sao Sun Dao in the past, as tragic as hell on earth. The government organized a large-scale tax collection, and the local wealthy families like the Han family at that time had to pay pearls as taxes. The establishment of Mi Chuan, until the fall of the Southern Dynasty, caused hundreds of thousands of pearl divers to lose their lives. Up to this day, Mi Chuan has been abolished, and the pearl divers in Gao Shan Dao, although still have to pay pearls as taxes to the imperial court, their lives have improved a lot. This is thanks to the Han family's ancestors. Perhaps the establishment of Mi Chuan during the Southern Dynasty was too terrifying, causing the Han family's ancestors to be greatly shocked, and from then on the Han family began to expand their influence in Gao Shan Dao. No longer an ordinary wealthy family. They meddled in the local government, manipulated the raising of soldiers, offered the open double-angle bracket Zhou Huan Zhuang close double-angle bracket to the princes and high-ranking officials in the capital, promised to offer a certain amount of pearls, offered the best quality pearls, and finally caused the imperial pearl mine to be disbanded, giving back freedom to the pearl divers. Later on, the prestige of the Han family also increased. Even the military power of the 2 prefectures Jiadushi had to give some face when meeting the old master. The establishment of Mi Chuan had long since become a thing of the past, and the fishermen of Gao Shan Dao all knew that the Han family had done their best to protect them. The day the old master coughed up blood, his body was already not well. Later, the doctors entered the examination room. Outside the room was already full of people kneeling. The sound of mourning continuously rang out. I was also there, kneeling together with Ah Shin. Until the door opened, Han Shanyu looked handsome, his eyes calmly looking straight at me. "Ah Bao, come in." I don't know why the old man wanted to see me when he was about to die. There were only me and Han Shanyu in the room. The old man reached out his hand towards me. I knelt down and used my 2 small hands to tightly grasp his withered hand, and said in fear, "Grandfather." The old man muttered in his mouth. I heard very clearly. What he said was, "What crime have children committed? My child, staying in the Han family, staying with Han Shanyu, is a debt to the Han family, you must pay." After the old man finished saying these words, his health could no longer support him, but he still didn't want to close his eyes. His eyes vaguely looked towards Han Shanyu, his lips moved. Han Shanyu silently looked at him, seemingly knowing what he was thinking, and chuckled. "Grandfather, rest assured, I'm still alive. The Han family still exists. Gao Shandao will absolutely not let the Imperial Pearl Field be restored." It seemed that the old man lying on the sickbed was satisfied. Tears flowed down the corner of his eyes. Using up his last bit of strength, he trembled and reached out to him. Han Chuan-yu was stunned. He frowned and walked forward, finally grabbing his hand. "I forgive you, you can go with peace of mind." In the cold winter, Gao Shandao had a snowstorm. Han Shan-yu became the new head of the Han family. The people called him Han Shan-jun. That year I was 7 years old, still not knowing what the old master's departure meant to the Han family and Gao Shandao, how complicated the situation was for Han Shan-yu to face. I only knew that he was wearing a fox fur coat, standing alone in the vast snow, his whole body unstained by worldly dust. He stood in the yard, his eyes cold and determined, never afraid. At that time I looked at him for a long time, suddenly wanting to open an umbrella, shielding him from the snowstorm. But I was too small, even with an umbrella, I couldn't cover his head. So I just stood there watching the snow fall on his hair, watching the young girl beside him lower her eyes, quietly opening the oil paper umbrella. That was the first time I met Jia Niang. She was a mute girl, the same age as Han Shan-yu, and was his personal maid. On the day the old master was buried, I first met Han Tran, the 4th master Han, the old master's adopted son. I originally thought he must be very old, but I didn't expect him to be so young. When Han Tran led a team of men back from the capital, the old master's coffin had already been carried out of the gate, the funeral procession was on the road, and the common people along the way knelt down and cried miserably. The man in silver armor had eyes as bright as stars and a straight nose. He got off his horse in the middle of the road, took off his armor, put on mourning clothes, and repeatedly kowtowed in front of the coffin, crying miserably, "Father, I'm late." Snow was falling from the sky. I saw Han Shanyu clasp his hands and bow to him, saying, "Fourth uncle, please hold back your grief." That year, the old master passed away. I was forgotten in the Han family, becoming a child that no one cared about. The Zhongjung Hall where Han Shanyu lived was strictly guarded, and was very far from Dao Lan Temple. As the head of the family, he was always busy, and had long forgotten me. The Han family in Gaoshan Road had hundreds of large and small pearl fields. They not only had their own pearl diving team, but also managed all the fishing villages and pearl divers in the Chu Sea. Therefore, after Han Tran brought the tribute to the capital, he hurriedly left the mansion upon returning. A Shin said that the Han family's rules were very strict, and told me not to leave Dao Lan Temple. She was a quiet person, and knew that I was bored, so she ordered someone to set up a swing in the yard for me. So when she was busy, I would sit on the swing alone, swinging back and forth. After the initial excitement passed, I began to lie on the windowsill every day, watching the flowers in the yard wither and bloom again. A year later, I also became quiet, not liking to talk anymore. I missed home, missed my father. Until now, he still hadn't come to pick me up. I was looking forward to seeing him, asking if he could take me back to Chu Sea. I also wanted to ask him, what exactly did we owe the Han family? I missed the broken boat at home, missed the Chu Sea breeze, missed my clansmen, and the boundless ocean. When I went out to sea with my father to look for pearls, the boat bobbed on the waves, the sea wind howled, blowing my hair and clothes. Our clothes were ragged, our skin was dark, life was hard, but standing on the boat overcoming the wind and waves, we were extremely free and at ease. Waiting impatiently, I was 8 years old. I had used up several jars of pearl powder and perfume, but my father still hadn't come. After that, I didn't want to lie on the windowsill every day anymore, so I asked a Tan if I could go to the corridor next to the gate outside Dao Lan Quan to sit. Probably because I had always been obedient, a Tan told me not to run around before agreeing. So when I had free time, I started to rest my chin on the corridor next to the gate, hoping that one day I could see my father's figure. In the middle of spring in February, the plum blossoms were in full bloom. I still couldn't wait for my father. But I waited for Han Tran. After a year, Fourth Master Han returned home, and coincidentally passed by the corridor and saw me sitting by the gate. The tall man, still with that handsome face and bright eyes, walked steadily towards me, holding a sword in his hand. The warm spring sunlight penetrated his shoulders, his smile was dazzling. Where did the child come from? What is his name? I looked at him, honestly answering, Hu Bao. Han Tran's smile froze on the corner of his mouth. He asked me, what is your father's name? Hu Dai. As soon as he said that, I realized something was wrong. His face darkened. Without saying a word he lifted me off the ground, held me under his arm, turned around and left. A tan. My whole body was held by him. My head turned towards Dao Lan Quan and called out. Sure enough, before he could go far, a tan chased after him. She knelt down on the ground to stop him. Fourth Master, where do you want to take Miss Baoer? Before she could finish her sentence, Han Tran kicked her. His arms were very strong, and he was very fierce. I saw a tan being kicked to the ground, unable to get up for a while, and immediately did not dare to speak again. Then he took me to the east rear house of the Han mansion, which was very far away. It was a large house. In a secluded, remote place, inside there was a very tall building. When I pushed the door open and entered, there were quite a few people in the yard. All of them were brave and strong, tying sandbags to their feet, practicing their fists and feet. Han Tran held me, just like that, passing through them, entering the main hall of that tall building. The men in the yard stopped practicing, following and surrounding me. In the room, there was a skinny old man with a goatee leisurely drinking tea. Seeing him coldly enter, he immediately stood up. Oh my, Fourth Master, you're here. Why are you so angry? Han Tran grabbed the shirt behind me, threw it towards him. Tomorrow, go to the pearl field, bring her with you. The skinny old man exclaimed again. Stop joking, this is a child, and a girl at that. It's Hu Da's child. Han Tran's voice was low, the skinny old man was stunned. The men watching outside the door were very strange, they used their hands to communicate, finally their gazes towards me changed. The skinny old man pulled Han Tran back, lowered his voice and said, Didn't the old master say that when she grows up, she will be the young master's wife? Fourth Master cannot cause trouble. How can words spoken when she is seriously ill be taken as true? Have you ever seen such a way of repaying debts? But the young master didn't say anything. They are saints who repay evil with virtue, I am not. Han Tran laughed coldly, his face full of disgust. I raised my head to look at him, not knowing where the courage came from. I pulled his cloak. May I ask, what exactly does my father owe the Han family? He and I looked at each other. The skinny old man beside me sighed. Han Tran squatted down slightly, using his large, rough hand to caress my neck. Your father owes the Han family a life. I was stunned, not daring to believe. My father killed someone? No, he took something that didn't belong to him. What? Red pearl? Red pearl? Impossible, there is no red pearl in the world. Your father told you that? Yes, he's lying to you, silly child. That pearl pond under the Zuya Sea, in the past 1,000 years only our Han family has salvaged that pearl. Do you know how many people died at that time? 3,000 people one after another. They were warriors meticulously trained by the Han family, willing to risk their lives for the Han family and the entire Gaoshan Dao, but in the end, that pearl fell into your father's hands, and was taken by him as his own. Han Tran used a little force in his hand, strangling my neck. You really deserve to die. I was a little out of breath, grabbed his wrist, and said with difficulty, I'll go find my father, let him return the jade to you. It's too late, that jade is gone. Han Tran narrowed his eyes. At this moment, I believed that he really had the intention to kill. I had difficulty breathing. The skinny old man hurriedly stepped forward, anxiously advising him. Killing him is useless. This child doesn't know anything, he is innocent. My eyes started to blur. Han Tran let go of my hand. Then, before I could regain my senses, he grabbed my collar again, rummaged through the antique shelf in the room, and took out a long box. Seeing this, the skinny old man panicked. Fourth Master, this matter should be let the young master know in advance. He is the head of the family, and the girl is his fiancée. Han Tran completely ignored him, pressed me down on the table, and turned his ears upward. He took out 2 half-foot-long silver needles from the long box and coldly said, It's natural for a father to repay his debt to his son. You come to atone for your father's sins and dig another pearl to return to the Han family. I obediently lay on my stomach, not resisting at all. I knew what he was doing. The best pearl diver in Gaoshan Road, in order to conveniently dive into the deep sea, had his eardrum pierced since he was young, becoming deaf. This was a very common occurrence among the fishermen in the past. The group of people surrounding the door using hand signals to exchange were all pearl diver who had been meticulously trained by the Han family. Han Tran wanted me to atone for my father's sins. I didn't resist and silently agreed. The silver needle pierced my ear, and the surroundings suddenly seemed to quiet down. In the painful ringing of my ears, I broke out in cold sweat from the pain. In an instant, I seemed to have an illusion and saw Han Shanyu's figure. It was spring, he was wearing a black brocade robe, a golden woven belt, his demeanor was elegant and imposing. I vaguely saw his cold eyes narrow, his thin lips tightly pressed together, his expression was uncontrollably angry. I couldn't hear anything anymore, my ears hurt a lot, my vision started to blur. That day, Han Shanyu really came. He came neither early nor late, my left eardrum was punctured, becoming half-deaf. When he hugged me and left, my ears were still bleeding. Han Shanyu was really fragrant. I grabbed his clothes, snuggled into his arms, smelling the spicy scent like night jasmine. After that, I always lived in his Zongjung Hall. Han Zheng didn't return for nearly 5 years. I heard that Han Shanyu gave the order, not allowing him to return to the mansion. In the Zongjung Hall, there was Jianyang, a gentle woman who knew how to make medicine and soup for me. When my ear stopped hurting, Han Shanyu asked me one day, "Abao, do you want to go back to Zuyasi? Your eyes are still as beautiful as ever." The brown eye seemed to be covered with a layer of shine. I looked at his serious face, and solemnly nodded. So in March of that year, the Han family arranged a carriage, taking Uncle Khan and I back to the Chu Na Sea together. Uncle Khan was the old servant with a hunchback who had served the master, and he was already 65 years old at that time. On the way back, I learned that he was also a fisherman. He said that he had served the master all his life, and that Han Shanjin had allowed him to retire at the Han family, but he longed day and night to return to the fishermen's boats. Leaves fall back to their roots, and the dead are buried in their hometowns, which is where they rest in peace. He also told me that Gao Shan Dao had a lot of bad air, and since ancient times it had been a desolate land, with an estimated 100,000 fishermen living along the coast. When he was young, everyone was a slave, a lowly person with a life like grass, and was not allowed to get on a boat for the rest of his life. Fishermen have been digging for pearls for generations, exchanging pearls for rice, but in the past, they didn't even have rice to eat. The Han family opened a pearl farm, bought pearls, traded with merchants in the capital, and set a quota to present to the imperial court. Nowadays, people often criticize them, saying that they only wanted to do so because they wanted to become a powerful force in Gaoshan. But in fact, only they themselves know that their ancestors worked hard for generations to create the current situation in Gaoshan. Pearls are still cheap, but at least the fishermen have rice to eat, and don't need to be forced to dig for pearls to the point of losing their lives. Gaoshan needs the Han family's power, and needs them to earn enough to fill their bowls and sinks. Uncle Khan talked a lot, and finally he asked me if I would ever return to the Han family. I replied, "I want to see my father once." Before I was 7, my father and I lived on a boat in the Chu Na Sea. We were extremely small people in this world, fishing for pearls, making a living. One day, my father suddenly said he wanted to take me somewhere, his face panicked. I rubbed my eyes and asked him, "Father, where are we going?" He said, "You have to listen to me, don't ask anything, this matter has nothing to do with you." Later, my father left the Han family. I chased him to the end of the alley. He promised that he would definitely come back, to take me back to the Chu Na Sea. I waited and waited, yearned endlessly, and finally I returned to the Chu Na Sea to find him. But my father died. The people in my clan told me that he risked his life. He had to go to the pearl pond at the bottom of the deep sea to search for pearls. No one wanted to go with him, so he went by himself. The tattered boat drifted on the sea for 3 days, and was finally discovered by the people of the clan. When they pulled up the rope, the other end of the rope only had a bit of pale flesh left. Later on, I often thought, if I hadn't chased him to the end of the alley that day, he wouldn't have promised to take me back to the Chu Na Sea. Would he still be able to live peacefully on the boat in the years to come? No, my father was destined to not be able to become an ordinary person. He lost his parents when he was young, living alone on a boat, relying on the help of the people of the clan to grow up. He was a good swimmer, and when he was young, his skin was dark, his features were neat, and he was a handsome young man. When he was young, he had a childhood sweetheart, who loved to smile, her eyes were curved, and her demeanor was very noble. She didn't mind his tattered boat, and ignored her parents' objections, and resolutely married him. Later, they wove fishing nets together, went to sea to look for pearls, and bravely survived the storms. A few years later, she became pregnant, and they were about to welcome a child. But the heavens did not favor him. That night thunder and lightning rumbled, and the sea was stormy. My mother had a difficult labor, and her breathing was weak. The old midwife in the clan said to my father, "No, no, there is no way to save her anymore," then hurriedly left. My father was in despair, looking at my mother's face gradually turning purple, and suddenly remembered a rumor. The face of a dead person was purple and swollen, implying unspeakable suffering, and the next life would also be extremely miserable. My father was in so much pain that life was worse than death. He could not accept it, and did not want to live a miserable life. He was determined to die, and decided to go to the Pearl Pond in the Chau Sea, to search for the red pearl that could bring the dead back to life. Everyone said it was fake. The Southern Dynasty Emperor established Mi Suyen. So many people died looking for pearls, but no Chau was recovered. But father couldn't control so many. In the heavy rain and strong wind, he went looking for pearls. His whole body was soaked, he couldn't open his eyes. That night the waves were so big, the sea surface roared like a ghost was screaming. My father didn't dive to the bottom of the sea, because when he was about to go into the water, a hand suddenly reached out from the sea. The person who was recovered had a breathing tube on his body, and was wearing a tight shirt made of cooked buffalo skin. His body was full of the smell of blood, and blood kept flowing from his mouth. He was about to die, but he gave the bag of pearls on his body to his father. The man said he was a dead soldier of the Han family, ordered by the head of the family to go pearl diving. Everyone died at the bottom of the sea. Only he was protected by his companions and escaped. I have found a red pearl. I must hand it over to the master. Absolutely do not let outsiders know. That bag of pearls, on the stormy sea, burst out a strange red color. My father's heart was pounding like thunder. His body was trembling, feeling like he had just experienced a world-shaking dream. Absolutely do not let outsiders know. The dead soldier has died. In this world, there will be no second person who knows about the existence of Chau. My father tightly held the red pearl in his chest, thinking to himself, if he does not save this person, Chau will fall to the bottom of the sea again. This is the will of heaven. My father's eyes were red. He gritted his teeth and returned to the boat. Then without hesitation, he placed the pearl in my mother's mouth. It was the strangest thing he had ever seen in his life. The red pearl was like a living thing, entering my mother's throat, under her purple skin. It emitted a red light that could be clearly seen. Finally, that red light disappeared into my mother's belly. My mother had died, her belly was bulging, and the fetal movements began to move. But Chau was resurrected, and could only save one life, and it chose me. In the end, my father choked up, cried bitterly, and cut open my mother's belly with trembling hands. My survival surprised the people in the clan. My father held me, knowing that my life was stolen. Afraid that people would discover the clues, from then on my father distanced himself from the people in the clan, even going pearl diving alone. 5 or 7 years passed in the blink of an eye. His obedient daughter was the treasure in his heart. But 7 years passed, and my father did not have a single day of peace of mind. Because everyone knew that 7 years ago, the only grandson and granddaughter of the Han family in Gaoshan unfortunately fell into the water, and after being rescued, their lives were in danger. The old master did not hesitate to use 100 bushels of pearls as a reward, inviting the medicine king into the mansion, but in the end, he was only able to save his grandson. That little girl named Han Shan Yu died when she was 8 years old. My father often called me, stupid Baoer, over and over again. It was just because I was too honest, a good and obedient child who never got angry. I was obedient and understanding, but I wasn't really stupid. I could find clues from their words, and piece together a complete story. I knew my father was worried every day, feeling guilty towards the Han family. When he was drunk, he would rub my head, lean on my small body, and cry. While crying he said, "My Baoer is also my darling, we are all children, why can't Baoer live? No secret can be buried forever." That year, the old lady who delivered me, every time she saw me, she would sigh to the people in the clan, saying that I was able to survive. It was truly a miracle. Father was wrong. He thought that there would be no second person in the world who knew the person who took the pearl from the Han family, but how could the Han family be an ordinary family? The most outstanding pearl diver in Gaoshan Road, the most experienced pearl diver, currently only exists in the Han family. They went through life and death for the Han family. They were the most loyal warriors, like the one my father pulled up. Before he died, he never thought of using that pearl to save his life. 3,000 people, the most elite team, planning for many years, not knowing how many painful lessons they had learned, risking their lives to dig for that pearl. How could there be no one to help at sea? When I was 7 years old, they finally asked the fisherman of Zuya about this person named Hu Da. The old master was a man of high virtue and prestige, always had compassion for the fishermen. But the dead warriors at the Han family's Pearl Beach were not, nor was the fourth master Han. They had thunderous methods, were used to seeing life and death, and had cold hearts. My father was afraid. It was not a pity for him to die, but he was afraid that his daughter would fall into their hands. The only way my father could think of was to take me to see the old master, to personally apologize. He did it later. The old master let me stay at the Han family, to be Han Shanyu's fiancé. When we parted, I used my hand to hold my father's face, saying I would wait here for him, come early. His tears immediately fell, as if returning to the stormy night 7 years ago. My father had become a man who was in so much pain that his life was worse than death, not wanting to be separated from his daughter. After returning to Zuya Sea, he longed day and night to return another pearl to the Han family, to exchange his foolish Baoer for him. That's why he went straight to the Pearl Pond without hesitation, never to return. The moment the clan discovered the boat, it was the day the old master was buried. I waited in the Han mansion, longing and yearning. It turned out that he had already died a year ago. Spring came, the plum blossoms bloomed, but my father would never come to the Han family to pick me up again. The day the old master coughed up blood and died, he said that he deserved to be punished. The punishment he received was to be crushed to pieces. I looked at the boat that I used to live with my father, that was where I grew up. Now the cabin was cramped. The furniture was covered in dust, jars and pots were piled up in a mess. The sunlight slanted in, the light was hazy. This place was clearly so familiar. Why did I suddenly feel like it was a lifetime ago when I looked at it now? Khan Ba said, Ha and Sun Quan was not in good health since he was young, and had an incurable disease. The old master tried his best to let him live, discovering traces of Zich Chau's existence. Even though wave after wave of people died, the Han family still persisted in searching for it, not hesitating to sacrifice 3,000 lives. The old man asked me, "Do you know why?" I looked at him stupidly, my lips moving. The Han family cannot be without him. Khan Ba patted my head. Good boy, the Sao Sun sect cannot be without him. An adopted son is an adopted son after all. The capital does not acknowledge it. The old master passed away. If it were not for Han Sun Quan, the contract signed in the open double-angle bracket Chau Hon Trang close double-angle bracket might be annulled. This was a conspiracy. I returned to the Han family. In the Tong Chin Hall, when Han Sun Nok saw me, his face immediately showed surprise. I knelt before him, took out a small cloth bag that I had carried with me since I was little. Inside was a Louis Lap pearl. In the past, my father loved me very much. Although in the Han family's eyes, the Louis Lap pearl was not a precious pearl, in our eyes, it could be exchanged for 5 bushels of rice, enough for my father and I to eat for 2 months. It was the most beautiful pearl my father had ever found. It was truly beautiful. The whole pearl was round and round, emitting a pure white light. Because I liked it so much, that year my father couldn't bear to exchange it for rice, so he sewed a small, misshapen cloth bag and put it inside, so that I could carry it with me every day, treating it as a pearl of peace. Fishermen along the coast have been searching for pearls for generations, exchanging pearls for rice. They firmly believe that pearls are auspicious objects, able to bring good fortune to people. I have carried this pearl for 3 years. Now I raise both hands high, offering it to Han Shan Yu. I told him, "Father is no longer here. From now on, a Bao will stay in the Han family, forever protecting Han Shan Jun." This would be the most solemn promise of an 8-year-old child in this life. I looked at him sincerely. My heart was filled with anxiety, not moving. Han Shan Yu slowly walked towards me. His cold eyes were filled with pity as he looked down at me. Finally, he squatted down slightly in front of me, stretched out a hand, and caressed my deaf left ear. The spring was warm, but his hand was still very cold. When he placed it on my ear, it made me shiver. My brother and I looked at each other, like that year at the screen in the old master's room. Han Shan Yu softly said, "I accept this pearl. My name is Hu A Bao. I come from a fishing family, and I am the fiancé of the head of the Han family, Gao Shan Dao." Han Shanjin has a handsome demeanor, treats others coldly. When his eyes look at me, there will be layers of laughter. I live in a small courtyard on the west side of Zhongjung Hall, and there is still only a Shin by my side. But I am no longer lonely, because every day I can meet many people, do many things. Every day at the hour of the dragon, without a Shin reminding me. I look forward to kowtowing to greet Han Shanyu. Sometimes I leave early, he has just woken up. Inside the screen, Jia Niang is serving him with his clothes. I kneel on the ground, raising my head to look seriously at that figure. Han Shanyu's voice rang out at the right time. He laughed and said, "Abao, you don't need to come to greet me every day. You don't need to kowtow every day. I am your future fiancé, not an elder." If it was Hu Abao after he came of age, hearing these words, his heart would definitely beat like thunder, his face would turn red. But at that time, I was just a child, and didn't understand much about the two words, husband. I considered him as the head of the family, so even though I had agreed, I still did it every day. He was quite reluctant, and later he would come to me, reach out a hand to pull me up, and ask me if I was an idiot, while using a childish tone to coax me. "Have you had breakfast yet? What do you want to eat?" Before, I would come to find him after breakfast, but from that time on, I started coming with an empty stomach, waiting for him to eat with me. I have never been a picky eater, and I happily ate anything. The only thing I was most afraid of was drinking that bowl of yogurt. In fact, yogurt is a very precious food, but it is made from goat's milk, and I always feel that its fishy smell is very strong, and has a musty smell. I didn't like to drink it, and at first Han Shanyu didn't force me. At first, he was like Ah Tan. No matter how much he tried to coax and trick me, he would still let me drink a few sips. But later, he was even worse than Ah Tan. When he was strict with me, he would use yogurt as punishment, forcing me to drink 3 bowls in a row. This situation often happened when he was teaching me to read. I didn't like to read, and always wrote the 1,000 characters script crookedly. He saw that I wasn't concentrating, so he frowned and ordered someone to bring him yogurt. Han Shanyu's cold face was very scary. Before he even opened his mouth, I obediently picked up the bowl of yogurt and drank it all in one gulp. After 3 bowls, one felt like vomiting a little, but when I saw his gaze, I swallowed it again.